Hey, what is going on YouTube? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, I want to talk about are single player games dying? Now, the reason why I'm talking about this is because recently, more and more lately, I have been seeing articles being published, videos being published, essentially saying that single player games are dead and or are dying. And I've been seeing this a lot lately. And it's kind of something I've wanted to talk about for a while now. Now, guys, more recently and more specifically, EA kind of said that single player games are dying. They didn't say it in that exact way, but they worded it in a way that essentially says single player games are dying. And that was covered in an article written about 2 weeks ago, so it's still fairly new. And in the article, it says this: EA says people don't really enjoy linear games as much today. The article goes on to say this: when Electronic Arts closed down Visceral Games and announced that the studio's in development Star Wars game was changing direction significantly, some wondered if it had to do with the game's more linear single-player nature. Given the huge success of multiplayer games like Destiny and PlayerUnknown's Battleground that use the games as a service model, was EA retooling Visceral's Star Wars game to respond to the industry trend? EA CEO Andrew Wilson said it wasn't necessarily. But now EA CFO Blake Jorgensen, I believe that's how you say it, sorry if it's not, he acknowledged that linear games are fading in popularity in the current market. And we keep reviewing the game. It can continue to look like a much more linear game, which people don't like as much today as they did 5 years ago or 10 years ago. Jorgensen said during the Credit Suisse Technology, Media, and Telecom Conference this week via DualShockers. Now, guys, like I said, this article was published about 2 weeks ago, and when I first heard about this, I kind of wanted to talk about why are single-player games dying, but at the time, I wanted to talk about other things as well, and now I have a chance to talk about are single-player games dying. So this article kind of inspired me to do that when EA said that, and all these kind of recent articles have inspired me to talk about are single-player games dying. Now, guys, let's get into it. Let's answer the question, are single player games dying? In my opinion, absolutely not. And the reason why I say this is because all we have to do is look forward at the most anticipated games of 2018. If you go look at most anticipated games of 2018 on YouTube or you type it in online, you'll find a list or videos that will basically show a bunch of single player games that are coming out in 2018. And it'll show you basically there are more single player games in 2018 that are more anticipated than multiplayer games. Half of these lists that I look at online, they have far more single player games than they do multiplayer games. So how are single player games dying when the most anticipated games of 2018 are single player games? You could literally look at any list and you'll see more single player games on there that are most anticipated for 2018 than you will multiplayer games. If you truly think about it, look at the games coming out in 2018. Look at the games that have been announced. Let's just name a few of them, the really big ones off the top of our heads. So, Red Dead Redemption 2, The Last of Us 2. Last of Us probably one of the biggest, most anticipated ones of 2018. The Overkill's The Walking Dead, the new Spider-Man game, the new God of War, Days Gone, Death Stranding, Far Cry 5, and, Detroit Become Human, and not to mention Metro Exodus, along with a bunch of other single-player games that I could go on and on about that are coming out, like State of Decay 2, and so on and so forth. So how are single player games dying when the most anticipated games of 2018, according to most lists online, according to most videos online, how are single player games dying when the most anticipated games, or most of the most anticipated games of 2018 are single player games? How are they dying when they're the most anticipated of 2018? It just doesn't make sense to me. Now, guys, in my opinion, why big gaming companies are coming out saying single player games are dying, the reason why I think they're doing this is so they could make multiplayer games and fill it with microtransactions just to make a bunch of money. Lately, I have been seeing more and more big game companies like EA becoming disconnected from their audiences. They stop focus on creating quality content and they more focus on multiplayer content that they could load up with microtransactions just to make money. I've been seeing more and more gaming companies do this, lately, I've been seeing more and more of them focused on, just doing stuff to make money rather than making a really good game. And games like Players Unknown Battleground are super popular right now. And I believe a lot of gaming companies believe that they should capitalize on that and make a multiplayer game to try to compete with that so they could get a cut of that money. And I've been seeing a lot of really big video game companies starting to become disconnected from audiences, disconnected from their players, disconnected from people who actually want quality content. I've been seeing them become disconnected from that and start making, mediocre, basically multiplayer games loaded with microtransactions. And it's absolutely ridiculous. And recently the Game Awards happened, and the games that were nominated for Game of the Year, most of them were single player games. In fact, Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild actually won Game of the Year, and that's a single player game. We look at Horizon Zero Dawn, Resident Evil 7, Injustice 2, Wolfenstein 2, Prey, Super Mario Odyssey, and you had Cuphead. You had the South Park The Fractured But Whole. You had Assassin's Creed Origins, Middle-earth Shadow of War, The Evil Within 2, along with plenty of other games that came out in 2017 that were great single-player games. How are single-player games dying when a Game of the Year award just went to a single-player game, Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild? How are single-player games dying when so many great, amazing titles came out in 2017, like the ones I just listed? How are they dying if so many good single-player titles came out this year? Sure, we have seen a rise in popularity among multiplayer games like Players Unknown's Battleground, which is super huge right now. Sure, we have seen a rise in popularity among multiplayer games, but single-player games aren't dead. They're not going anywhere anytime soon. In fact, it's almost every year there's a multiplayer game that's bigger than all the other single-player games out there. It's the way it's always been. Hasn't Call of Duty been the biggest multiplayer game all the time, every year since its release? Halo, hasn't that been super big each and every single time it comes out? Don't those multiplayer games like Destiny, don't they usually dominate? Hasn't it been like that forever? So how are single player games dying? Most of the good titles that were nominated for awards this year were single-player games. The most anticipated games of 2018, according to most lists and videos online, are single-player games. How are they dying when they're single-player games? To be honest, I think these big video game companies are saying single-player games are dying, or people don't enjoy linear story games anymore, just so they can make a multiplayer game filled with microtransactions to make money. So how is it any different than it was a year ago, 2 years ago? It's not. Single-player games are the exact same place they were 2-3 years ago, in my opinion. It's always been, in my opinion, about 60-40 when it comes to games. 60% single-player games and 40% multiplayer games. That's usually what I see, kind of the ratio that games come out. If anything, single-player games are still ahead by a lot. And everyone enjoys different things. Some people only enjoy multiplayer games. Some people only enjoy single-player games. Some people enjoy both. But in my opinion, mostly what people play are probably single-player games. But multiplayer games are pretty popular as well, because who doesn't love to play some Overwatch, some Call of Duty? Who doesn't like Players Unknown Battleground? If we look at the most anticipated games of 2018 on any list in any video, you could go look it up. Most of them are single-player games. Red Dead Redemption 2, The Last of Us 2, Days Gone, so on and so forth. So how are single-player games dying when they mostly dominate the gaming marketplace? If you walk into a GameStop, most of the games on the shelf are not multiplayer, they're single-player games. So in my opinion, I still believe that single-player games are dominating the gaming industry and the gaming space. But I do believe multiplayer games are gaining more and more popularities, MMOs and stuff like that. But everyone likes their own different stuff. In my opinion, it's always kind of been about even between single player games and multiplayer games. Sometimes one year one is more popular, and then the other year another one's more popular, and it kind of teeter-totters back and forth. But in my opinion, single player games have always kind of been at the top, or just a little bit above what multiplayer games have been. So I really don't think single player games are dying out at all in any way, shape, or form. So guys, that's just my final opinion. I honestly do not think single player games are dying out. I do think multiplayer games are gaining more traction, but I don't see single player games going anywhere anytime soon at all. Until, the only time I think single player games will die out is 20 to 30 years from now, when we have suits and VR headsets where we could go into a virtual world, whether that be multiplayer or single player, and you could feel the environment, you could feel the wind on your skin, you could feel people touching you, you could grab things, you could have your own virtual home, and everything's perfect virtual reality wise. But until then, I don't think single player games are going to go anywhere anytime soon. Anyways guys, that's just my opinion on it. What do you guys think? Do you guys think single player games are dying? Leave it down in the comment section below. Anyways, I love each and every single one of you. I hope you did enjoy this video for what it was. If you did, be sure to drop a like, comment, and subscribe, as we talk about gaming stuff almost daily here on the channel. If you guys have an idea for the next video, leave it down in the comment section below. If you guys want me to talk about something in the next video, leave it down in the comment section below. Anyways, I love each and every single one of you. I hope to see you guys right back here tomorrow. And remember, stay freaky.